I can't give you the exact coordinates, but these three accounts come from the most isolated canyons in the New Mexico high desert, places where the stone gets cold even in the summer, and the air itself smells less like ozone and more like deceit. This is not about predators or paranoia. This is about the ancient, whispered rules that Kayla Tso, an archaeology student, chose to ignore. Never trust a sound that is too perfect. Never rely solely on technology. And never, ever confuse grief for a homecoming. Every witness you are about to hear dismissed those rules until the moment a sound, an image, and a perfect imitation of her deceased brother came back. Before we venture deeper into these haunted canyons and dense forests, let's get some engagement going. Please hit like and subscribe for more true Skinwalker horror stories animated. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now, turn off the lights, settle in, and make sure you stick around for the end. It's the only way to see the full scope of the terror. Story 1. The Voice in the Wash. I believed in the scientific method. Data, evidence, peer review, reproducible results. The stories my uncle told me growing up about the Yi Naldlushi, the Skinwalkers, I filed them away as cultural folklore. Fascinating, yes. Academically valuable, absolutely. Real? No. That arrogance almost killed me. That arrogance made me ignore every warning sign until it was almost too late. It was August 14th, 2024, specifically a Wednesday. I remember because I'd been in the field for exactly 11 days, and Wednesday was my scheduled check-in day with my advisor. Except I had no cell service. I was camped in a dried riverbed 20 miles southwest of Shiprock, in a geological formation the locals called the Red Throat. The name should have been my first warning. But I was documenting pottery shards for my dissertation, measuring erosion patterns, taking soil samples. The isolation was deliberate. I needed uninterrupted time, no distractions, no other researchers contaminating my work site. Just me and the work. I'd set up my tent in a wash between two red sandstone cliffs that rose maybe 60 feet on either side, the kind of place that turns into a death trap if it rains, where flash floods can appear within minutes from storms you can't even see. But the weather report said clear skies for the next week. The sky was that deep, endless blue you only get in the high desert. Perfectly clear, not a cloud anywhere. My campsite was simple. A two-person tent, even though I was alone, a camp stove, a cooler with ice that had mostly melted, 3 5-gallon water jugs, a folding table where I kept my laptop, my notes, my collection bags, everything organized, everything in its place. Control. That's what I told myself I had. Control over my environment, control over my research, control over my future. The temperature that day had peaked at 97 degrees Fahrenheit. By evening, it had dropped to maybe 75, which felt cool by comparison. I was cataloging fragments by headlamp around 10 p.m., logging each piece into my database. Pottery shard, possibly ancestral Puebloan, corrugated exterior, approximately 800-900 years old. The kind of work that requires total focus, total attention to detail. I had my headphones in, listening to white noise to help me concentrate. That's probably why I didn't hear it approaching. I took my headphones out to make a note in my physical logbook. That's when I heard it. A voice, female, calling my name from somewhere up the wash, from deeper in the throat of the canyon. "Garrett? Garrett, are you there?" It was my sister's voice. Not similar to my sister's voice, not kind of like her voice. It was exactly her voice. The same slight rasp she gets when she's worried, the way she draws out the second syllable of my name like she's testing to see if I'm paying attention. The way she used to call me when we were kids and she needed help with something but didn't want Mom to know. My sister Brenna lives in Phoenix. She's a dental hygienist. She works Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. She doesn't camp. She doesn't hike. She gets anxious if her phone battery drops below 50%. She definitely wasn't in the middle of the New Mexico desert at night, 20 miles from the nearest paved road. But the voice was perfect. I stood up, my hand shaking as I pointed the headlamp toward the sound. The beam cut through maybe 30 feet of darkness before dissolving into nothing. The wash stretched out like a throat, like the locals said, swallowing light, swallowing sound. The cliffs on either side seemed to lean in, narrowing my world. "Hello?" I called back. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the vastness. That was my first mistake. My uncle's first rule, the one he repeated every time he told stories about the Yi Nald Lushi: never respond to voices in the dark. Never acknowledge them. Never let them know you can hear them. But I forgot. In that moment, hearing my sister's voice in a place she shouldn't be, my academic brain engaged instead of my survival instincts. Maybe it's a hiker, I thought. Maybe someone's lost. Maybe there's a rational explanation. The voice came again, closer now, much closer. Like she'd covered 50 yards in the seconds between my response and her reply. "Garrett, thank God. I can't find the path. I'm lost. Please help me." The desperation in it was real. I could hear her breathing, shallow and quick. I could hear the catch in her throat like she was holding back tears, like she was trying to be brave but barely holding it together. It was the exact sound she made when she was 12 and broke her arm falling off the monkey bars and was trying not to cry in front of the other kids. My rational mind screamed that this was impossible. The logistics alone made no sense. How would she even know where I was? How would she have gotten here? Why would she come at night? But my emotional mind, the part that still remembered being her little brother, the part that still felt responsible for protecting her even though she was older, that part said my sister needed help. The two thoughts went to war in my skull while I stood there, frozen, headlamp beam trembling. I grabbed my flashlight, the big mag light I kept for emergencies. Police-grade, 3 D-cell batteries could blind someone if you shined it directly in their eyes. I clicked it on and started walking toward the voice. Each step felt wrong. The sand beneath my boots was too soft, too loose, like walking on powder. It muffled sound. The cliffs on either side seemed to lean in further, narrowing my world to a corridor of stone and shadow, and that voice calling to me. "Keep talking," I called. "I'm coming to you. Just keep talking so I can find you." Thank God, Garrett. I'm so cold. It's so cold out here, I can't stop shaking." I walked faster, the maglite beam bouncing. I could hear my own breathing now, loud in my ears, my heartbeat, the crunch of sand under my boots. But nothing else. No insects, no distant animal sounds. The normal ambient noise of the desert at night had vanished, like something had scared it all away. Or eaten it. "Where are you exactly?" I called. "Do you see my light?" Yes, I see it. Keep coming. I'm just ahead. Please hurry, I'm so cold." That's when the first crack appeared in the illusion. That's when my rational mind started winning the war. It was August in New Mexico. Even at night, even with the temperature drop, it was still in the mid-70s. You could wear shorts and be comfortable. It wasn't cold, not even close. I stopped walking. The beam of my maglite trembled, not from my movement, but from my hands shaking. "Brenna," I said, using her name deliberately, testing. "Why are you cold?" Silence. Not the natural silence of a pause in conversation. This was the silence of something recalculating, adjusting, realizing it had made an error. Then, from directly behind me, so close I could feel breath on the back of my neck, warm and fetid. "I'm right here, little brother." I spun around, the flashlight beam wild and panicked. Nothing. Empty wash. Empty darkness. The beam illuminated sand, rock, scattered creosote bushes. No person, no sister, no anything. But I smelled something. Wet dog, decay. The unmistakable stench of roadkill that had been baking in the sun for days. That sweet, rotten smell that sticks in your throat and makes you gag. It was overwhelming, thick enough that I could taste it. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not human footsteps. Not the two-beat rhythm of a person walking. This was something else. Something with more legs. Something moving with a strange, syncopated rhythm. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Like it was learning to walk. Like it was remembering how legs worked. Like it was trying to figure out the proper rhythm and couldn't quite get it right. And it was coming from the darkness ahead of me, from where the voice had been calling. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't analyze. My body made the decision before my brain caught up. Every drop of adrenaline in my system dumped at once. I ran back toward my tent, toward my truck, toward the illusion of safety. The maglite beam bounced insanely, turning the cliffs into a strobing nightmare. My lungs burned, my legs pumped. Sand slipped under my boots. Behind me, the voice started again. But it was wrong now. Horribly, cosmically wrong. The words were my sister's, but the pitch kept sliding, dropping an octave mid-sentence, rising to a shriek that no human throat could produce, then dropping again into a growl that vibrated in my chest. "Garrett, come back, Garrett. It's so cold here, Garrett. Why won't you help me? I'm your sister, Garrett. I need you." The words began to overlap, like multiple recordings playing at once, slightly out of sync. Like whatever was producing the sound couldn't quite manage to make one coherent sentence anymore. Like the mask was slipping. I could hear it behind me now, moving fast. Faster than anything that size should move. I could hear claws on stone, on sand, switching between surfaces. I could hear breathing that sounded like wind through a cave, hollow and echoing. I reached my tent and grabbed for my truck keys in my pocket, fumbled them, dropped them in the sand. Bent down, frantically sweeping my hand across the ground, the maglite under my arm now, barely illuminating anything. Found them. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the lock. That's when I made the mistake of looking back. It was standing at the edge of my light, just barely visible. The thing that had been using my sister's voice. It was big, maybe 6 feet tall but hunched over, like it was trying to make itself smaller. Like it was imitating a person but couldn't quite commit to standing fully upright. The basic shape was canine, like a wolf or a large coyote. But the proportions were wrong. The back legs were too long, jointed wrong, bending in places they shouldn't bend. The front legs looked almost like arms, with something close to hands, but the fingers were too long and had too many joints. The head was the worst part. It was shaped like a wolf's head, but flattened, like someone had taken a skull and compressed it. And it was looking at me with eyes that reflected my light, flat and yellow, with no depth to them. Like a doll's eyes. Like glass. It opened its mouth, and my sister's voice came out, perfect and clear. "Why are you running from me?" Then it moved. It dropped to all fours and came at me. I got the truck door open and threw myself inside, slamming the door behind me, hit the lock button, jammed the key in the ignition. The engine turned over on the first try, and I have never been more grateful for reliable machinery in my entire life. I threw it in reverse, not caring about the tent, not caring about my research, not caring about anything except getting away. As I backed up, my headlights swept across my campsite. The thing was standing in front of my tent now, on 2 legs again, perfectly upright like a person. It raised one of its front limbs in a wave. A human wave, slow, deliberate, mocking. Then it smiled. I saw teeth, too many teeth, going back too far. I turned the truck around and drove. I drove without headlights for the first mile because I didn't want to see if it was following me. When I finally turned them on, I kept checking the rearview mirror, terrified I'd see those yellow eyes reflecting back at me. I drove for 2 hours straight to Farmington without stopping. Found a gas station that was still open, went inside, bought a coffee I didn't drink, just stood under the fluorescent lights around normal people buying chips and lottery tickets. When I finally felt like I could breathe again, I went back to my truck. That's when I saw the message. On my windshield, written in what looked like mud or clay, were words in shaky letters. "Found you, little brother." I got back in the truck and drove another 4 hours to Flagstaff. I stayed in a motel. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called my sister. She answered on the 3rd ring, groggy and annoyed. "Garrett, do you know what time it is?" "Are you okay?" I asked. "What? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm in bed. Why are you calling me at 6 in the morning? Did you have any dreams last night? There was a pause, a long pause. That's a weird question, she said, finally. Please, just tell me. Another pause. Then, I had a nightmare. I was in a desert, walking around at night, calling your name. But you wouldn't answer me. I kept calling and you were right there, but you wouldn't turn around. Why? My blood went cold. What happened in the dream? I don't know. I woke up. Why are you asking me this? I didn't tell her. I couldn't tell her. How do you explain that something wore her voice like a costume? That something practiced being her, learning her mannerisms, her speech patterns, her emotional tells? That it invaded her dreams to perfect the imitation? No reason, I said. Just wanted to check in. Love you. Love you too, weirdo. I hung up. I sat in that motel room for 6 hours, staring at the wall, trying to process what had happened, trying to rationalize it. Stress, isolation, auditory hallucination, wishful thinking combined with pattern recognition. I went through every possible explanation my scientific training could provide. But I couldn't explain the writing on my windshield. I couldn't explain the tracks I'd seen. And I couldn't explain why my sister dreamed she was calling my name in the desert on the exact night something used her voice to lure me into the dark. I should have stopped there. I should have abandoned the project, gone back to campus, switched to a different research focus. Ancient Polynesian navigation, medieval European agriculture, anything that didn't involve the desert, the isolation, the Yi Naud Lushi. But I had 3 more weeks of funding. I had a dissertation deadline. I had an advisor who was already skeptical of my work, and I had pride. Stupid, arrogant, academic pride that told me I was smarter than a folk legend. That told me there had to be a rational explanation. That told me if I just approached this scientifically enough, I could understand it, document it, explain it. So, 3 days later, I went back.
Story 2. The Still Thing. I relocated to a new site 40 miles north, closer to the Utah border. This time, I did my research. I talked to locals, I asked about dangerous areas, I listened to the warnings instead of dismissing them, and I deliberately chose a site that was the complete opposite of the wash. A wide-open mesa with 360-degree sightlines, flat as a table for miles in every direction. You could see for 10 miles in any direction. Nothing could sneak up on me here. Nothing could hide in the shadows because there were no shadows. It was exposed, vulnerable, but that vulnerability felt like safety. I could see threats coming from a mile away. Safe, controlled, scientific. I set up camp on August 17th, 3 days after the wash incident. This time I had a plan. This time I had methodology. I wasn't just stumbling around in the dark waiting for something to happen. I positioned my camera, a high-end DSLR with a telephoto lens, on a tripod pointing at my tent, set to take a time-lapse photo every 30 minutes from sunset to sunrise. Whatever happened, whatever I saw or heard or imagined, I'd have documentation. I'd have evidence. Objective, reproducible evidence. The first night was quiet. Too quiet, in the way that makes your brain start inventing sounds just to fill the void. I kept waking up at every small sound, my body locked in fight or flight mode, my heart hammering. But nothing happened. No voices, no footsteps, no yellow eyes in the darkness. The morning photos showed nothing but my tent and the empty mesa, exactly as it should be. I started to feel stupid. Started to feel like maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Like maybe the stress of graduate school and the isolation and the family history of anxiety had combined into a perfect storm of hallucination. I actually laughed at myself while I made coffee that morning. Garrett Nakai, afraid of the dark like a little kid. Garrett Nakai, seeing monsters in shadows. The second night, I finally slept. Real sleep, the kind where you don't dream, where you sink into darkness and disappear for hours. My body, exhausted from 2 nights of insomnia, simply shut down despite my conscious mind's protests. I woke up at 6:47 a.m. to my alarm. The sun was already above the horizon, turning the red rocks orange and gold, painting long shadows across the mesa. It was beautiful, peaceful. I made instant coffee on my camp stove, a small ritual of normalcy. Added powdered creamer from a packet, stirred it with my pocket knife because I'd forgotten to bring a spoon. Then I checked the camera. 36 new photos. I scrolled through them on the camera's display screen, sipping my terrible coffee. Sunset, gradual deepening of shadow. Dusk, my tent outlined against purple sky. Full dark, just the tent illuminated by starlight, barely visible. My tent, unchanged, photo after photo after photo, everything normal, everything as it should be. Then, at the 2:30 a.m. timestamp, something different. There was a shape next to my tent, roughly human-sized, maybe a bit larger. But it wasn't human. It was on all fours, but the proportions were catastrophically wrong. The back legs too long, jointed like a grasshopper's. The front legs too short, too thick. The head massive and low slung, like a wolf's head grafted onto something that was never meant to be canine, on limbs that suggested something human, but refused to commit to the shape. I looked up from the camera to the spot where the shape had been in the photo. Empty ground. Nothing but scrub brush and sand, scattered rocks, one small juniper tree about 100 yards away. Looked back at the camera. Still there in the photo, clear as day. Looked up again, nothing. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the camera. Coffee splashed over the rim of my cup, burning my hand. I didn't feel it. All my attention was focused on the disconnect between what the camera showed and what my eyes showed. I pulled out the memory card with fumbling fingers, loaded the photos onto my laptop to see them larger, clearer. There it was, crystalline in detail. The thing was closer to the tent in the 3 a.m. photo, and it was looking directly at the camera, or at least its head was pointed that way. I couldn't make out features clearly, just a dark mass that suggested a face, suggested eyes, but refused to resolve into anything specific, no matter how much I zoomed in. Like the image itself was rejecting clarity. In the 3:30 a.m. photo, it had moved again. Now it was at the entrance to my tent, one long, articulated limb reaching toward the zipper. The limb looked like an arm and a leg had merged together, with too many joints, with something like fingers at the end, but wrong. At 4 a.m. the photo was black, not empty, not dark. Absolutely black, like someone had put a lens cap on the camera, like something had covered the lens entirely, pressing against it. When I zoomed in on the blackness, I could see texture. Hair or fur, coarse and matted. The 4:30 a.m. photo showed the thing walking away, moving toward the southern edge of the frame, toward the distant juniper tree. But here's what made my stomach drop, what made the terrible coffee I just drunk threaten to come back up. It was standing upright now, on 2 legs, walking like a person in a suit that didn't fit right, each step a jerky, mechanical movement like a puppet being yanked by strings. I zoomed in on its face in that final photo and immediately wished I hadn't. It didn't have eyes. It had empty sockets filled with shadow that seemed to extend back further than the skull should allow, tunneling into darkness. And its mouth was open in what might have been a smile or might have been something else entirely, except the teeth went too far back, row after row disappearing into the throat like a shark's mouth. I checked every photo after that. 5 a.m., normal. 5:30 a.m., normal. 6 a.m., normal. By the time the sun rose, the thing had vanished completely, like it had never been there. But it had been there. The camera proved it. The camera didn't lie. Cameras don't hallucinate. I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the mesa, hands still shaking, breath coming short and fast. Nothing for miles. Just empty desert, rocks, scrub brush, that one juniper tree about 100 yards south. The juniper tree. I noticed it yesterday when I set up camp. It was a distinctive landmark, twisted and gnarled in that way juniper trees get when they're hundreds of years old, fighting for survival in harsh conditions. Bent over on itself like an old person hunched against the wind. I focused the binoculars on it. It was moving, not swaying in wind. The air was perfectly still, not bending or flexing, moving. Its entire mass, the trunk, the branches, the scraggly greenery, all of it was shifting. Slowly, ponderously, repositioning itself. I watched for 5 full minutes, my breath fogging the binocular lenses, my arms aching from holding them steady. The tree took a step. Not metaphorically, not in my imagination. It lifted what should have been roots and placed them down in a new location, about 6 inches away from where it had been. The movement was slow, glacial, but undeniable. Then it settled into perfect stillness, became a tree again. Looked exactly like it had before, like it had been growing in that spot for centuries, roots deep in the earth, permanent and unchangeable. But it had moved, and I had watched it move. That's when I understood. That's when the full horror of what I was dealing with finally crystallized in my mind. The camera wasn't lying. The camera wasn't broken. The camera was the only thing telling the truth. My eyes, my brain, my entire system of perception was being fooled. The Skinwalker wasn't hiding. It wasn't lurking in shadows. It was standing in plain sight, wearing reality's skin, and my mind was too desperate for normalcy, too committed to a rational worldview, to process what it was actually seeing. The shape next to my tent at 2:30 a.m.? It was still there right now. The thing walking on two legs at 4:30 a.m.? It had walked to that spot and become a juniper tree, putting on the tree's shape like a costume, and my brain had simply accepted it. How long had it been there? Had it been there when I first arrived? Had I set up my tent 30 feet away from a predator because it was wearing the skin of a landscape feature and I was too blind to see it? I started taking photos, dozens of them. The tree, the landscape, my tent, everything. Then I checked them on my laptop. And there, in every single photo that included the juniper tree, it wasn't a tree. It was the shape from the 4:30 a.m. photo. Standing upright, arms too long, head too large, perfectly still, pretending to be a tree. And in every single photo, it was looking at the camera, at me. I packed up in under 10 minutes. Left the tent standing because I wasn't going near it, wasn't going near the thing that had touched my tent, that had stood over me while I slept. I threw everything I could quickly grab into my truck and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I watched the juniper tree, or the thing that was pretending to be a juniper tree. As I got further away, as the distance increased, I saw it move one more time. It raised one of its two long arms, waved, slow and deliberate. The exact same wave it had given me at the wash. The same entity, following me, learning, getting better at imitation with each encounter. The voice in the wash had been its first attempt. This seamless merging with the landscape, this was its second. Each time more sophisticated, each time harder to detect. And I realized with a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins. It was studying me, learning what scared me, what fooled me, what my weaknesses were. This wasn't random predation. This was deliberate, methodical, scientific. It was conducting its own research, and I was the subject.
Story 3. The Final Invitation. I should have gone home. I should have driven straight back to Flagstaff, packed up my apartment, and transferred to a different university as far from the Four Corners region as possible. Maybe University of Maine. Maybe University of Alaska. Somewhere cold and wet and as opposite from the high desert as geography allowed. But I didn't. Because despite everything, despite the voice in the wash and the thing disguised as a tree, despite every survival instinct in my body screaming at me to run and never come back, I couldn't let it go. The Kiva, the legendary underground chamber that my grandmother had told me about before she died, the one my advisor said was just folklore, that no such structure existed at those coordinates, the one that would prove my entire thesis, that would validate 3 years of work, that would secure my PhD and my future career. I've been working toward finding it since I started graduate school. It was my white whale, my obsession, and I was so close. The pottery shards I'd found were consistent with the time period. The geological surveys suggested underground voids in the area. All the evidence pointed to it being real. And maybe, just maybe, if I could find it, if I could document it, if I could return to campus with proof, I could pretend the other things hadn't happened. I could file them away as stress-induced episodes, as the hallucinations of an overworked mind, as anything except what they actually were. So, on August 23rd, 6 days after the tree incident, I went back to the original site. Not to the wash where I'd heard my sister's voice, not to the mesa where the thing had watched me sleep, but to the coordinates my grandmother had given me. The ones she'd made me promise never to visit. The ones she'd said were a thin place, where the boundaries between worlds weren't right. The ones she'd marked on a hand-drawn map that she'd given me 2 weeks before she died, while making me swear on everything I held sacred that I'd never go there. I broke that promise. For science, for my career, for my ego. I found the entrance at sunset. The light was perfect, that golden hour when everything looks surreal and beautiful. The entrance was exactly where the map said it would be. A hole in the ground, maybe 3 feet across, hidden in a cluster of boulders that formed a natural enclosure. Ancient stone steps, worn smooth by centuries of use, led down into darkness. I tied off a climbing rope to the largest boulder, tested it 3 times, checked my gear. Headlamp, backup flashlight, GPS unit, camera, phone, even though I knew there'd be no service underground. I was methodical, professional. This was what I'd trained for. I rappelled down. The kiva was real. The chamber opened up about 20 feet down, and it was exactly as my grandmother had described it. Circular, maybe 20 feet in diameter, with walls covered in petroglyphs that I immediately recognized as pre-ancestral Puebloan, older than anything that should exist in this region. The symbols were different from anything I'd studied, geometric patterns interspersed with figures that looked almost, but not quite, human. This was it. This was the discovery that would make my career. I was standing in a room that hadn't been documented by modern archaeology, that challenged everything we thought we knew about the timeline of human habitation in the Southwest. I started taking photos immediately, hands shaking with excitement now instead of fear. Wide shots of the chamber, close-ups of the petroglyphs, measurements, notes, GPS coordinates logged and backed up. This was real. This was mine. I was so lost in the fever of discovery that I didn't notice I wasn't alone until he spoke. "Garrett," my brother's voice. My brother Trent, who died in a car accident 7 years ago when I was 19 and he was 24, who I never got to say goodbye to because I was at school, and by the time I got the call and made it home, he was already gone. Who I still dreamed about once a week, always the same dream, where he walks into my room and says he's sorry he scared me. It was all a mistake. He's not really dead. I turned around. He was standing on the opposite side of the chamber, exactly as I remembered him. Same black Carhartt jacket he'd worn constantly. Same faded Radiohead t-shirt underneath. Same beat-up Timberlands. Same crooked smile. Same scar above his left eyebrow from when we were kids, and I accidentally hit him with a wiffle ball bat. "Trent?" The word came out broken, barely a whisper. He took a step forward, and even the way he moved was right. That casual, loose-limbed walk he had, like he was never in a hurry, like he had all the time in the world. "Been a long time, little brother." Every rational part of my brain, every scrap of scientific training, every warning I'd received from my grandmother and my uncle, all of it screamed that this was impossible, that this was the thing from the wash, from the mesa, that it had learned enough about me to attempt this final, terrible imitation. But grief is a traitor. Grief doesn't care about logic or reason or survival. Grief sees what it wants to see, and it wants to believe so badly that it will make deals with any devil that promises reunion. "You're not real," I said, but my voice had no conviction. My voice sounded like I was trying to convince myself, trying to will it to be true, and failing. He smiled, and it was Trent's smile, the one he used when he was being patient with me, when I was being stubborn about something and he knew I'd eventually come around. "Does it matter? I'm here. You're here. This place, it's outside the normal rules. Time works different, space works different. We can talk, really talk, like we never got to before the accident." I wanted to believe so badly it physically hurt. My chest was tight. My vision was blurring with tears. My hands were shaking, not from fear now, but from the desperate, impossible hope that this was real, that my brother was standing in front of me, that I'd found a place where the dead could return. "Come closer," he said softly. "Let me see you. It's been so long. You've changed, grown up. Let me get a good look at my little brother." I took a step toward him. My legs moved before my brain caught up. Another step, the distance between us shrinking, close enough now that I could see details. The stubble on his jaw, the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the silver chain he always wore, the one Mom gave him for his 18th birthday. "That's it," he said, his smile widening. "Just a little closer, then we can talk about everything. About why you're really here, about what you're looking for. Close enough now to touch, close enough to reach out and confirm he was solid, real, not a hallucination or a dream. Tell me something first," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The kind of whisper he used to use when we were kids and he was sharing a secret. "The coordinates of this place. Whisper them to me. No one else can know the exact location. It has to be our secret, just between brothers. You understand, right?" And that's what finally broke the spell. That's what pulled me back from the edge. Trent was never secretive. Trent was the most open, honest person I knew. He didn't believe in secrets between family. He used to say that secrets were poison, that they festered and grew and eventually destroyed whatever they touched. He would never ask me to keep something from our family. He would never ask me to hide a discovery. He would never frame something as just between brothers, because that inherently excluded everyone else we loved. And there was something else, something small, but the details are where the lie always shows itself. "What did Mom give you for your 18th birthday?" I asked. He smiled, touched the chain around his neck. "This. You can see it right here." "What else?" His smile faltered, just a fraction, just for a second. "What do you mean?" "There were 2 gifts. The chain was from Mom. What was the other one, and who was it from?" The smile remained frozen on his face. But the eyes I'd been staring into, looking for my brother, they changed. The brown didn't fade. The warmth didn't disappear. But something behind them shifted. Something vast and old and hungry looked out at me from behind my brother's face. "I don't remember," he said. But Trent would have remembered. The second gift was a leather-bound journal from our grandmother, the same grandmother who'd given me the map to this place. He'd written in it every day until he died. We'd buried it with him. "You're not my brother," I said. My voice was steady now, clear. The grief was still there, still a gaping wound in my chest, but I could see past it now. I could see the truth. The smile remained, but the voice changed, dropped an octave, became something that resonated in the chamber like it was coming from the walls themselves. "Close enough. Better than nothing. Better than 7 years of silence and dreams that end when you wake up." "No," I said. "It's not." The thing wearing my brother's face took a step closer. "But I could be. I could be exactly what you need, what you've been missing. I've been watching you, Garrett, learning you. I know what you want. I can give it to you. Your brother, your sister, your grandmother, all here, all waiting. All you have to do is whisper the coordinates, share the secret, make this place ours." I understood then what it really wanted. Not just to lure me close enough to kill, not just to feed on my grief or my fear. It wanted me to claim this place, to speak the coordinates out loud, to make them mine, to take ownership of this thin place where boundaries didn't hold. Because if I claimed it, if I made it mine, then it could claim me in return. The invitation worked both ways. "Look at me," it said, and Trent's voice was back, perfect and pleading. "Really, look at me. Don't you want this to be real? Don't you want your brother back?" And I did. God help me, I did want that. I wanted it more than anything I'd ever wanted in my life. But wanting doesn't make things true. And the truth was standing in front of me, wearing my brother's face like a mask. And behind that mask was something that had never been human and never would be. I pointed my flashlight directly at its face. Not the headlamp. The big mag light. The one I'd kept with me since the wash. Police grade. Bright enough to blind. For one moment, in the harsh LED glare, I saw what my grandmother had tried to warn me about. "The soul is the only thing they can't fake," she'd said. "The body, the voice, the memories, all of that can be stolen and worn. But the soul, the essential light of what makes a person themselves, that cannot be replicated. The eyes remained brown, the face remained my brother's, but in that moment of pure, undeniable light, I could see through them, behind them, and what I saw was nothing. Not darkness, not evil, just nothing. An absence, a void, a hunger without end or purpose or mercy, wearing a face to hide the emptiness underneath. "I see you," I whispered. The thing that looked like Trent smiled wider, too wide, the lips pulling back to reveal teeth that went too far back, row after row disappearing into the throat. "Then you see the choice. I can be your brother, or I can be something else. Your choice, Garrett. But you're not leaving this chamber until you choose." It was right. I was 20 feet underground in a circular chamber with one exit, and it was standing between me and the rope. I couldn't fight it. I couldn't outrun it. All I had was light and the rapidly fading battery in my flashlight. And one other thing. The thing my grandmother had taught me, the thing I'd dismissed as superstition and folk wisdom. The thing that every culture with Skinwalker stories emphasized, from the Navajo to the Ute to the Apache. They hate the dark. Not the darkness itself. They live in darkness. They're comfortable in shadow and night and spaces where light doesn't reach. But they hate the moment when light vanishes, the transition, the instant of change from illumination to void. It disorients them, makes them lose their grip on whatever form they're wearing. I didn't think. I just acted. I threw the mag light at the ground, at the stone floor with all the strength I had. The bulb shattered. The LED died. And the Kiva plunged into absolute, total darkness. The thing that looked like my brother screamed. It wasn't my brother's voice anymore. It wasn't any voice that should come from a human throat. It was a sound like stone grinding on stone, like metal tearing, like wind through a cave that goes down forever. It echoed off the walls, multiplied, became a chorus of anguish and rage that made my teeth ache and my bones vibrate. I heard it move. Not footsteps, a scrambling, clawing sound. Multiple limbs on stone, the scrape of claws, the wet sound of something reshaping itself, bones breaking and reforming, skin splitting and mending. I didn't wait to see what shape it would take next. I ran for where I remembered the rope being, hands outstretched, blind in the absolute darkness. My fingers found the wall, found the petroglyphs, rough under my palms, traced along them, found the opening where the shaft led up to the surface, found the rope. I climbed, hand over hand, feet scrambling for purchase on the stone steps, rope burning my palms even through my gloves. Below me, I could hear it thrashing, could hear my brother's voice saying my name over and over, but wrong now. The syllables stretched and distorted. Garrett, 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 Garrett. I climbed faster. My lungs burned. My arms screamed. My hands were bleeding. I could feel the warm slickness inside my gloves. But I climbed. Halfway up, I felt the rope go taut. Something had grabbed it from below, started pulling. Not to climb up after me, pulling down. Trying to pull me back down into the darkness. I wrapped my legs around the rope and held on. For 10 seconds, 20, 30, I held on while something below pulled, and I pulled back. My muscles were tearing. My grip was slipping. My gloves were soaked with blood and sweat. Then the rope went slack so suddenly I almost fell. I heard a sound from below. Not a scream this time. A laugh. My brother's laugh. But endless, echoing, multiplying until it wasn't laughter anymore, but something closer to sobbing or shrieking or both at once. I climbed the rest of the way up in 30 seconds, threw myself out of the opening, grabbed the rope and hauled it up after me, coiling it frantically, not wanting to leave any connection between the surface world and whatever was down there. The sun had set while I'd been underground. The desert was in that deep twilight that comes before true darkness. I could see my truck, maybe 50 yards away. I could see the cluster of boulders around the Kiva entrance. I could see the first stars appearing overhead. And I could see my brother standing next to my truck. Not the thing wearing his face, my brother, or something that looked exactly like him in the fading light, standing there, watching me, waiting. I didn't move toward the truck. I ran the opposite direction, into the desert, into the gathering darkness. Without water, without supplies, without anything but the clothes on my back and my truck keys in my pocket. I ran until I found a highway, flagged down a truck. The driver took one look at me, bloody, disheveled, wild-eyed, and almost didn't stop. But I must have looked pathetic enough that his basic human decency overrode his common sense. "You okay, man?" he asked. "Car trouble," I lied. "Can you take me to the nearest town?" He drove me to Shiprock. I bought a new phone at a gas station, called a tow truck company, gave them my truck's location, told them to leave the keys at the impound lot. I never went back for it myself. Couldn't. The thought of going back to that place, of driving past that cluster of boulders, of potentially seeing my brother's face watching from the rocks, made my chest tight and my hands shake. I took a Greyhound bus back to Flagstaff, sat in the back, didn't talk to anyone, watched the desert roll past the window and wondered how many of the shapes I was seeing were actually rocks and trees, and not something else pretending to be rocks and trees. I withdrew from my graduate program the next week, told my advisor I'd had a family emergency, told my friends I was burned out, told my mother I needed a change of scenery, told everyone except my uncle, who took one look at me and said, "You saw one." Not a question, a statement. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Did it use someone's face?" "Yes." "Someone dead or someone living?" "Both. Different times." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The living person. Have they been having dreams?" My blood went cold. "My sister. She said she dreamed about calling my name in the desert. It's learning her, using the dreams to perfect the imitation. The next time you see her, pay attention. See if anything feels off. If she says things she wouldn't normally say. If she knows things she shouldn't know." "What do I do?" "Nothing. If it's already in her dreams, there's nothing you can do. Just be aware. And if you ever hear her calling you somewhere she shouldn't be, somewhere isolated, somewhere dark." "I know," I said. "Don't answer." He looked at me with something like pity. "It will try again, nephew. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but you're marked now. It knows your face, your voice, your fears, your grief. It knows the shape of the hole your brother left, and it will use that knowledge when it gets hungry again." That was 2 months ago. I moved to Seattle, got a job in a bookstore, stopped doing anthropology, stopped thinking about the desert, stopped reading about folklore and legends and the things that supposedly don't exist. But I can't stop the dreams. 3 or 4 times a week, I dream I'm back in that kiva, standing in the darkness. And my brother is there, and my sister, and my grandmother, and everyone I've ever loved and lost. And they're all calling to me, all asking me to come closer, all asking me to whisper the coordinates, all asking me to make this place ours. And in the dream, I can never remember why I shouldn't. I can never remember what they really are. The grief is too strong. The loneliness is too deep. And I take a step forward, and another, and another. I always wake up before I reach them, always wake up gasping, tangled in sheets soaked with sweat. But each time, I get a little closer. Each time, the temptation is a little stronger. Each time, I remember a little less about why I ran. And 3 weeks ago, my sister called me. "Garrett," she said, "I keep having this dream." My chest went tight. "What kind of dream?" "I'm in the desert, walking through these canyons at night, and I'm looking for something. I don't know what, but I know it's important, and there's someone with me, walking beside me. I can't see them clearly, but I know they're there, and I know they're important." "What do they look like?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. I can't tell. Every time I try to look at them directly, the dream shifts. But they feel familiar, safe, like someone I should know. Brenna, I said, I need you to do something for me. If you ever have that dream again, and the person asks you to follow them somewhere, to go into a cave, or a canyon, or anywhere dark and isolated, don't do it. Promise me. There was a long pause. Garrett, you're scaring me. Promise me. Okay, I promise. But what's going on? I couldn't tell her. How do you tell your sister that something is stalking her in her dreams? That it's learning her, studying her, preparing to wear her face like a costume? That the thing walking beside her in the desert is building a perfect replica of her, and one day it might step into the waking world wearing her shape? Just trust me, I said. And if you ever hear me calling you somewhere you know I shouldn't be, somewhere isolated, at night, don't answer, she finished. You've told me this before, multiple times. Garrett, seriously, what happened out there? Nothing, I lied. Just be careful. I hang up and sit in my apartment and try to convince myself that I did the right thing by running. That I was smart to abandon the Kiva, the research, everything I'd worked toward. That staying alive is worth more than any discovery. But some nights, when the loneliness gets too heavy and the grief too sharp, I take out the map. The one my grandmother gave me. The one with the coordinates marked in her careful handwriting. I trace the lines with my finger and wonder what's waiting there now. Is it still wearing my brother's face? Has it moved on to someone else's? Is it angry that I escaped, or patient, knowing that eventually the grief will win? That eventually I'll come back, we'll whisper the coordinates, we'll make that place ours? I don't know. And that's what keeps me up at night. The not knowing. The waiting for something that might never come, or might come tomorrow. All I know is that sometimes, late at night, I hear voices. My sister, my brother, my grandmother. Always from somewhere I can't quite see. Always saying they're lost. Always asking me to help them find their way home. And the worst part, the part that terrifies me more than anything else, is that I'm starting to forget what their real voices sounded like. The memories are fading, being replaced by the perfect imitations I heard in the desert. Soon, I won't be able to tell the difference between my actual sister and the thing that's learning to be her. Soon, the mask will be the only face I remember. If you're watching this and you live anywhere near the Four Corners region, be careful. If you hear someone calling your name in the dark, someone you love, someone you lost, someone who shouldn't be there, don't answer. Don't go looking. Don't try to rationalize it or explain it or convince yourself there's a logical reason for what you're hearing. Just run. Because the thing that's calling might not be who you think it is. And the person you love might be somewhere else entirely, dreaming they're looking for you, while something else practices being them. Learning their voice, learning their mannerisms, learning how to break your heart in just the right way to make you come closer. The skinwalkers don't just wear skins, they wear souls, they wear grief, they wear loneliness and love and every vulnerable crack in your armor. And they're always learning, always getting better, always finding new ways to invite you closer. I still hear my brother sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my apartment, asking me to whisper the coordinates, asking me to share the secret, asking me to make it ours. His voice comes through the walls, through the heating vents, through the space between sleeping and waking. And some nights, when I'm weak and grieving and desperate and so tired of being alone, when the weight of loss feels like it's crushing my chest and I'd give anything, anything at all, for one more conversation with him, I almost answer. I stand at my window and look out at the city lights and think about the desert, about the darkness between the stars, about the thin places where the boundaries don't hold. And I open my mouth to speak, but then I remember. I remember the eyes with nothing behind them. I remember the teeth going back too far. I remember the rope going taut as something pulled me toward the darkness. I remember my sister's voice on the phone telling me about the familiar stranger walking beside her in dreams. and I close my mouth, close the window, turn on every light in my apartment, and wait for dawn. But each time it gets a little harder. Each time the temptation is a little stronger. Each time I remember a little less about why I should stay silent. And I know with a certainty that feels like ice in my bones that eventually I'll forget entirely. Eventually the grief will win. Eventually I'll answer when they call. And when I do, when I finally whisper those coordinates into the darkness and make that place ours, I wonder what I'll become. Will I know the difference? Will I be able to tell that the thing wearing my brother's face isn't really him? Or will the imitation be so perfect that it won't matter anymore? Maybe that's what the Skinwalker really does. Maybe it doesn't kill you. Maybe it just makes you forget what's real and what's pretend until the line disappears entirely. Until you're so deep in the lie that you can't find your way back to the truth. Maybe I'm already there. Maybe the thing I've been running from isn't behind me anymore. Maybe it's inside me now, wearing my thoughts like a costume, speaking with my voice, looking out through my eyes. How would I even know? That's the question that haunts me. Not whether it will come for me again, but whether it already has. Whether the person who left that desert, who moved to Seattle, who works in a bookstore and tries to forget, whether that person is still me, or whether I died in that kiva and something else climbed out wearing my face, carrying my memories, being so good at pretending to be Garrett Nakai that even I can't tell the difference. Some mornings I wake up and don't recognize my own reflection. Some days I catch myself saying things I don't remember thinking, doing things I don't remember deciding to do. Some nights I dream I'm standing in the dark, calling to people I love, trying to lure them closer, and I don't know which side of the dream I'm really on. The Skinwalker is real. It's out there in the desert, waiting, learning, perfecting its craft. Maybe wearing my brother's face. Maybe wearing faces I'll never see. Maybe wearing my face, calling to my family, practicing until it gets me exactly right. Or maybe it already has. Maybe I'm the imitation now, and the real Garrett Nakai is still down in that kiva, in the darkness, screaming for someone to help him while something that looks exactly like him walks around in the world above, telling his story, warning people, being so convincingly him that nobody suspects the truth. How would you know? How would anyone know? That's the real horror. Not the thing in the darkness, not the voices calling your name, but the possibility that you've already answered, that you've already invited it in, that you've been wearing its face for so long you've forgotten you ever had one of your own. If you see me on the street, if you hear my voice telling this story, if you watch this video and think you know who I am, ask yourself, how can you be sure? How can you be certain that the person speaking to you is the same person who went into that desert 3 months ago? What test could you possibly run to determine if I'm real, or just something that learned to be me so well that even I believe it? There is no test. There's no way to know. And that's exactly how they win. So here's my final warning. The one thing I can say with absolute certainty. If someone you know goes into the desert and comes back changed, if they tell you stories about skinwalkers and warn you about voices in the dark, if they seem just slightly off in ways you can't quite articulate, don't trust them. Don't believe them, because they might be telling you the truth, or they might be telling you exactly what they want you to hear. They might be warning you, or they might be luring you. And you'll never know which until it's too late. The coordinates are still in my head. I could tell you right now where that kiva is, where that thin place waits. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks maybe if I share the secret, the burden will be lighter. Maybe if I make it ours, we can all go there together and figure out what it really is. But I won't. Not yet. Not until the forgetting is complete. Not until I can no longer remember why I shouldn't. And then, when that day comes, when I finally speak those numbers out loud and invite you to follow me into the darkness, I wonder if you'll go. I wonder if the imitation will be good enough, if the mask will fit perfectly enough, if I'll have become such a flawless copy of myself that you'll trust me. I hope not. I hope you remember this warning. I hope you run. But grief is a traitor, and loneliness is a hunger, and the promise of reunion, of one more conversation with someone you've lost, is a temptation stronger than survival. So maybe you'll come. Maybe you'll follow me down into that chamber. Maybe you'll stand in the darkness and whisper the coordinates with me. Maybe we'll make it ours together. And maybe, in that moment, we'll both forget which one of us is real. Or maybe we'll remember, and that will be so much worse.
If you made it this far, you're exactly who I create these stories for. Here's how you help me bring you more. Hit that like button. 1 second. Massive difference. It tells YouTube to show this to more horror fans. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I drop true psychological horror every week. No clickbait, just pure dread that lingers. Drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? What time is it? Brave enough for 3 a.m.? Tell me what horror you want next. Your suggestions shape my content. We're pushing for 1,000 subscribers. Every sub keeps real horror alive. If this gave you chills, if you glanced at the darkness behind you, if you felt something, subscribe. You're not just supporting a channel, you're keeping atmospheric horror alive. Check the next video on screen for another nightmare. See you in the next nightmare. Stay scared.